introducing the solution. So we'll take a look at the integration, which Brian will do. So basically, as I said, Brian will right now connect the EMnify user interface to S3. All right, hold on. I will give the presenter tool to Brian. No. Presenter. Okay, hold on. Yes.
Okay, thanks a lot. So I will try and share my screen at the moment. So first of all, thanks a lot for the introduction, Jean-Luc. I think that gave a good introduction of what some of the use cases are. So what we should do first of all is take a look on the EUI side, where someone would activate some of these integrations. So this account here is first when I log into the UI, and this is a demo account that we use here for a couple of testing purposes. We have a couple of devices that we have registered to this account that we and a few SIMs that we test quite frequently. But there's nothing very high traffic, but of course we can generate a few events for the sake of demonstrating S3. So the way that I get to adding data streams is by this icon on the top right. This is technical settings page here, and you navigate to it via this link icon in the top right, and this is for listing application tokens, which is for programmatic access to our API. But what we're interested in here is in data streams, which is this panel here just after the application tokens. And you can see we have one in use. So each account can use up to 10 for free. So we don't actually charge any additional costs if someone wants to create any new ones. So we can see we have one at the moment, which is a Kinesis stream. This is active. So I want to add an S3 stream, data stream from this account. So what I would do is click Add Data Stream. So we have a wizard that opens up to help guide you through creating one of these streams. And you can see the first thing that we have to do is decide which type of stream that we want to send. So like Jean-Luc mentioned, we have events, which is if something happens with a device, like it's been activated or deactivated, or this. We can also get events like someone has used a wrong password when they're trying to log in. We also get this authentication error event. And we have usage data, which is related to actual endpoints and SIMs. So today, are we going to use event data?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. So let's choose event data. And the API type, this is for the type of integration that we want our data stream to be. So we can see, like Jean-Luc mentioned, we have Salesforce, REST API, which is if you have your own application server that's listening. We have some third-party services like Keen.io and Datadog, which is for visualization. And today we're going to have a look at S3. So we have Kinesis at the very end, and we have S3, which is a simple storage solution. So we have 3 new fields that we have to fill out here. The first 2 are the access keys and the secret keys. So people who are familiar with AWS might know what these are already. But in order to get these, we have to go over to our AWS console, and I'll show you where someone would locate this. So here is the AWS console. This is also a test account that we use for lots of different testing and integration purposes, really, for the success org. So what you need to do is take a look at the IAM, which is credentials management and user management. And we go to users. At the moment, we've set up a user specifically for the webinar. but it's up to yourself how you want to actually manage this. It's probably not recommended that you use some main admin user, but that you have delegated a user specifically for that purpose. So at this webinar user, when you are creating a new user, you want to have programmatic access, and this is with security credentials. So this user has no access keys, and these are the keys. I'll just switch back to the EMnify. These are the access keys and the secret keys that we mentioned here. That's located here on the user security credentials. So in order to create those two, you just click this button, create access key, and it will generate this security key and the key. So they refer to this as key ID and the secret access key. So right now we can just copy them across, but it should be noted that you only see these once, and it gives you the opportunity to download these credentials as a CSV. So it's really recommended that you keep these in a secure place and that you don't lose them. Okay, so I can copy across the access key. This is referred to as the ID, and the secret. This is the AWS secret key. And so those are my credentials set up. Another thing worth noting for this user, if we go back to this permissions tab, so this user is allowed write access to S3. For the purpose of the webinar, we've given it full write access, but you can see under the resource tab here that there's multiple S3 buckets that the user can write to. It's probably a good idea to restrict it just to the bucket that you are streaming data to, and that you should also just have write access only, not that this data stream or that these credentials can perform all kinds of different actions that you don't expect. So at this point, we can go over to S3. We have a bucket in here already that we were testing with previously, but we can just create a new bucket for the sake of the demo. So at the moment we support EU Ireland as the default bucket, as the default region, sorry. And what we should do is give it a new name. We shouldn't have dashes in there, so we'll give it webinar EDS. Okay. So we can skip this second page here. And this one is also important that we block public access for this bucket by default. It's good to leave this as the default setting because you are not sure what kind of data that you're going to be streaming into this bucket, and as best practices, people should be wary of the permissions for S3 buckets. They definitely should not be public. Okay, so then we create a bucket, and it's this one down here, webinar EDS, and in the region EU Ireland. So what we can do is just copy the name of the bucket. We can paste this in here, and we can click Add Data Stream. Okay, so we get this dialog window that tells us, okay, you've successfully created a data stream, and here it is down here. So we can see the integration is S3. We've activated it for events. It's active at the moment, which is worth noting because here on the right we have some controls that we can interact with the stream or manage them. So we have a pause button which will stop streaming events to that bucket. We have a filter button which we will take a look at in a few minutes, and we can also delete it. So you'll notice that we don't have any information in these three columns here, which is the last time that we sent data and the remote status. One important thing is the remote status. So that tells us if the data stream that we've set up is allowed send data to the actual S3 service. So what we should do now is because this is a test account and we don't have quite a lot of SIMs active right now on it, it's probably not sending event data. So what can we do to trigger some events?
We can simply reset connectivity of one endpoint,
okay,
which will suspend and activate the SIM.
Okay.
And we should see then 2 events at least in the S3 bucket.
Okay, so if we go to endpoints, is there one that we're looking for?
Yeah, you can use mine, which is 1+.
Okay. Jean-Eudes 1+2.
Exactly.
This guy. Okay, so we can reset connectivity on this device. Can't be reset now. We click reset connectivity, and this performs a network initiated reset on the device. So there's a few different ways you can generate events, but I quickly found out, of course, that if you're trying to log in with invalid credentials, that might take you a while. So a reset connectivity might be a very quick way to test if you're sending the event data. That's if you have an account with not so many events that are happening. Okay, so we can have a look at the remote status, and we see a 200, and that's a good sign. That's a HTTP response code, which means that the server has accepted the post data, and we can see the last time that the data has been sent. Also, for the event, we have an event ID, and that's useful for tracking. Okay, so if we go back over to our S3 console, we can take a look inside the bucket, and we have quite a few events already. So it could be that actually there was some activity on this account while we were working. Mm-hmm. So we have a few. So this is a timestamp here, so you can see it's events from the year, month, and the day, and this is the time 15/25/04. So let's have a look at the most recent one. So we can click open, and can show this. Let's open it with my text editor. Okay, so let me just full screen. So basically what we see here is a CSV file, and I'll open this up in another editor so that it's actually readable, but you can see that there's not very much there's not a huge amount of information. So if we're sending something like XML, that's a lot of data. So CSV is nice because there's not, it's a very lightweight way of communicating information. So I'll go back to my Finder window, and for instance, one of the nice things that you can do on Mac OS is straight away I can open this in numbers, which is like an Excel spreadsheet. So we just have one event in here, so of course the document is not so huge, but we can see there's column headers, which is the event ID. There's a timestamp. There's a description of the event, and we have quite a lot of other information. And we can see the endpoint name. It's Jean-Eudes device. So if you had an account that was extremely, that had a lot of devices, then this file would be an easy way to search through a lot of events. Okay, so let's have a look. So some of the other options that you can do here is streaming usage data. But at the moment, we're just having a look at events from the console. So if anyone has some questions as to some of the use cases there, or how you could use this, then you can please you can write some questions. We'll have a Q&A session at the end. Maybe before we do that, we can also take a look at filtering, right?
Yeah, that'd be great.
So in the UI, this is the S3 stream that we've created here. So if we click on the filter, we can see this, we have another wizard here. So by default, there's no filters applied, and that means that all of the event data is being sent in this data stream. So let's say I'm only interested in create PDP context, then the data stream will send just these create PDP context if this filter is added. So the reason why this is useful is maybe I have some other service reading from my CSV files in S3, and I'm only interested in one event. Well, I can filter it either in my application or in my AWS service, but I can also filter it directly here on the data streamer. So if this might save some resources on your AWS application, maybe you have to build some code that's filtering out everything. You can actually do this directly on the EUI. So, for instance, some events that we have quite often is update location, and maybe I've built a tool that reads from my CSV files for SIM activation. Let's say I'm interested in how many times my customers or people in my organization have activated SIMs. Maybe this is important for BI, and this brings us back to what Jean-Nude mentioned at the start of the webinar, is that data doesn't mean knowledge. So if I have a lot of data, if my account is producing a lot of information about the activity of my SIMs, how do I gain knowledge from it? And part of this is adding these filters and building specific applications that are reading specific insights into the data of my organization.
Okay, cool.
So I can just show very quickly, if I've paused the stream here, we can see, okay, the status is paused and it will stop sending events to S3. I can start this again and I'll see the status is active. We can go back to S3 and see has much else happened there. So we can see just in the last 15 minutes or so, we have quite a few more CSV files. So I think the way this is written is by the size of the CSV. So if you go over a megabyte of data, then you'll receive a new CSV. Otherwise, there'll be a time limit, which I think is 2 minutes, I think.